How you doing, YouTube? We are here today with what it looks like, okay? A Karin matchup tier list is what we're here to talk about today. And when I say we're going to talk about all these matchups and my opinion on all of them. So this might be a longer video than usual. No matter how long this video is, I know you guys will watch it. You guys will like and subscribe. Don't ever forget to like and subscribe and turn the notification bell on, because you know what I'm saying, we're going up. I guess we start with Zangief, right? Is a character I actually think is slightly in his favor, so maybe I'll have to make one more row, but I do think she loses to Geef just slightly. His jab is really good, and the flex really stops her from playing a lot of neutral. So he jamming you while you're trying to walk in to play neutral, and then he can flex your buttons and get a free SPD. And I also think when Zangief activates V-Trigger, Karin actually cannot play the game. She has to just walk backwards because it's too scary trying to press a button in neutral, knowing that he might just jab buffer all the time. Ryu. It's 5-5. Karin is really weak against close fireballs. Like neutral footsie range fireballs, it's really hard for Karin to deal with. And I also think that Ryu jumping is really good versus Karin. Like his jump light kick is really hard to anti-air. Once you get a bar, the matchup becomes a lot easier. And since, you know, Karin has really good firepower and she has really good neutral even against Ryu, you know, you can get around the fireballs. Chun-Li, I think, beats Karin. I feel like I haven't played against the best Chun-Li with Karin. Like I played Yujix last season, but I would love to play him now with Chun-Li being buffed to see. But I'ma just leave it at 6-4. The neutral is just so bad for Karin. Like it's so hard to get in against Chun-Li, against the forward medium punch, the stand fears, the fireball, her great anti-airs. It's just so hard. And now that like she can stop you coming forward now with low forward into heavy legs, it just makes the matchup that much harder. I feel like the Karin player has to be really on point to win this matchup, and sometimes you gotta just random Chun-Li out with Karin because it's so hard to just try to like play her solid and win on the ground. Karin only can really walk forward and try to like punish you for like walking back or maybe pressing a button too late, or she just hit you in neutral with her great buttons. But since like that's not the case against Chun-Li, it makes Chun-Li V-Trigger even more scarier since Karin doesn't have anything but walking forward to really approach Chun. Honda, this is a matchup I don't really have much experience, but I think it is like maybe slightly Honda's favor, but even. Like when I play the matchup, I just don't feel it's that hard. You know, Honda has good buttons in neutral against Karin, but Karin can easily whiff punish everything Honda does. If you pick the V-Trigger too, it makes it so headbutts aren't as scary, but the only thing that's bad is that you can't parry the butt slam. If you block the first hit, the second hit, the parry start up too slow for the second hit coming down. So you can't parry that, and it's really hard to guess which side to input Karin's DP on to beat the EX butt slam. Dalsum, bad matchup. It's so hard for Karin to get in, you know. Think about the ways you have to win against Dalsum, right? You have to pretty much random Dalsum out to win, right? Like that's why you always hear Dalsum players saying they got random out, but in reality they didn't get randomed out. That's just the only way you can beat him. A character like Karin who has no like different things to change up her aerial tactics or like any move to just get in that's plus, or like, you know, just force your way in with. You don't have any way to force your way in this matchup, and by the time you probably got in, you probably lost like 40-50%. You gotta try to make getting in counts the first time, because if he gets back out, you probably won't get in the second time. Blanca, I think Karin beats Blanca slightly. I think the neutral is hard for Blanca. It's so easy to whiff punish him. You can't throw out Blanca ball, she can punish him. The jumping and rainbow ball is not really gimmicky on Karin, since like her anti-air isn't that good. So you, as a Karin player, you know when you can and can't anti-air. Everything he does is pretty much just shut down from how solid Karin is as a character. Like he can't really just get in and force himself in. You know, the jump-ins is not that big of a problem to deal with unless there's, you know, spacing their jump-ins really well, but then you just block it. You know, I just feel like the neutral overall is just so much in Karin's favor that it makes it hard for Blanca. Akuma. I actually think this matchup got a lot better this season. So I'm gonna put it right here. Akuma's stand medium kick now is so much easier to whiff punish, right? It's so easy to whiff punish. That move used to be so annoying for Karin to deal with before because you couldn't actually whiff punish it because the hurt box was, I don't know where it was. Like, it just didn't exist. I do think this matchup improved because they took away the full screen activate, and now that stand medium kick is easier to whiff punish, especially playing a character like Karin. It's so easy to whiff punish things. Gil, pretty sure Karin beats Gil like 6-4. When I play the matchup, it's just like you can punish like mostly everything Gil does. He can't down forward heavy kick on you. He can't really throw out fireballs if you have meter, and he can't really force himself in on Karin. The only thing is hard is when you have no meter. Round 1 start is a little bit harder, but you can kind of react to Gil's fireballs and jump. Ibuki is another character I think Karin beats 6-4. Reason being, the neutral is so bad for Ibuki. You can literally sit there and just wait for her to whiff. And now that they nerfed so much, they nerfed the kunai now that you can punish it. It's easy for Karin to walk into the range where EX kunai actually whiffs, and you know, then you just get a combo now and you can punish Ibuki. And the neutral is just bad, you know. Without an EX bar, Ibuki is just so overwhelmed by Karin on the ground that she can't really do much. And this is a matchup I've personally always liked, and that I always thought was really good for Karin. Alex, a matchup I think is slightly in Karin's favor. Alex's buttons are actually pretty good against Karin. The light shoulder is really good on Karin. His neutral is pretty good on Karin. Only reason I think Karin beats him is because she does out neutral Alex, and eventually he has to start going for some gimmicks. Mika, this is a matchup that I'm a specialist in. I do think Karin beats Mika about 7-3. It's actually really hard for Mika to get in. Everything Mika does is just a gimmick because she can't get in on Karin, and then like the only thing she has left is trying to mix up her jump ins, and if you just really good at reacting to the jump, she can't really do that, and then she'll start trying to dash or drop kick, which is also checkable. Jury, here's a matchup I think is even or maybe slightly in Jury's favor. It's kind of hard to say. Jury's light fireball is so good on Karin. When you get that one store, Jury's stand medium kick is a problem for Karin too. Like, that button just beats so much that you do with Karin. Poison, I think it is a 7-3 matchup. You honestly shouldn't be losing this. Poison outranges Karin everywhere on the screen. She has a V trigger that does mad damage. She has the huge rush down and comeback factor to come back on Karin, and it's just so hard getting in on Poison. Her anti-air is so good. You can't jump, you can't dash. Unless you're doing EX heart rate and you're cornered, you're pretty much just going back to neutral with Poison every time you V reversal because you don't want to take the mix up, and the neutral is just really bad. Seth, I do think slightly beats Karin, but I don't know it too well. The V skill 1 is so good versus Karin, you know, since she is a character who is really good and dominant in the neutral, right? And the Seth's V skill 1 pretty much stops neutral, right? You end up running into it a lot with Karin because you're trying to walk back and forth and you're trying to look out for X kick. So the V skill 1 is honestly, in my opinion, what gives Seth the edge in this matchup. Lucia, this matchup is like 6-4. Lucia is kind of a worse Karin in a way, right? Her button's a lot worse. Even though she has a fireball, since the fireball has like it's 2 parts, Karin can sweep the fireball on the startup and sometimes crush counter, or she'll just trade maybe or win clean. You never lose the war with the fireballs. She can literally just overwhelm her in the neutral, and it's just really bad for Lucia that way. Zeku Karin I think is even. I think it's even because Zeku's approach is really hard for Karin to deal with. Like young Zeku, he can turn young Zeku, and then it's really hard to anti-air young Zeku. Oh, they got young and old. Okay, so I'm just putting Zeku pretty much Zeku as a one character. So the young is really hard to deal with the air approach, and when he gets the V trigger, you have to keep watching low. It's also hard against old because Grams are actually really good against Karin, and they are annoying, and also the demon flip is really annoying for Karin to try to anti. You have to really be looking out for it. G, I think since they nerfed G anti a little bit, it got a bit better. But this is a bad matchup for obvious reasons. G neutral literally dominates Karin's neutral. He has a fireball that's really good, and you can't actually react to it unless you're so far away. His neutral is better than Karin's. His jab buffers, his stand light kick buffers, his stand medium kick is hard to get around with Karin. And the stand heavy kick is hard to get around, and it's very hard to whiff punish both of those buttons. This is Menat. This is another matchup that improved a lot over the years. They've been nerfing Menat buttons more and more and more, and it's becoming easier for Karin to fight against her. But I do still think Menat beats Karin. Menat's V-Trigger 1 is really hard for Karin since it just kind of stops her whole match. She has to like wait till the orbs run out because she can't really do much to fight back against it. Ken is a matchup I think is slightly in Karin's favor. I don't know why, like Ken's fireball is so hard to get around when you're just shooting really close fireballs, and then you start mixing it up with stand jab and stand medium punches. And stand jab is really good against Karin because it beats a lot of her pokes. But I do think Karin slightly edges out because her neutral is better than Ken's. The birdie, I think it improved a lot this season, so I think it's only slightly bad for Karin. They added way more whiff recovery frames. You can literally stand heavy punch every single heavy punch that Birdie throws out, and it's really easy now to whiff punish Birdie's heavy punch. And also they made the stand medium punch more whiff punishable, so they can't just brainlessly buffer medium punch on Karin like before. But I do still think the matchup is bad because V-Trigger 2 and the neutral is still bad for Karin. It's still hard to get in on Birdie. I do feel like Sakura edges it out versus Karin. Her jump in is really good versus Karin, number one. Also, it's very hard to whiff punish Sakura's stand heavy kick with Karin. Stand light kick is really good in this matchup for Sakura. Her stand light kick buffer is so good, and it also punishes. You can punish Karin's crouching medium kick and her stand heavy kick with that stand light kick a lot. Gao. I think me personally, I'm really good at the Gao matchup, and I haven't really played it this season, so I'm gonna just say 5-5 Vega. Your character I think slightly beats Karin because his neutral, you know, obviously you see a claw on my man hand. You can get in on Vega and just he explodes because he has no defensive options or anything. He's not getting big damage from neutral, so it's not too scary, you know, for Karin to eat a few of Vega buttons. Balrog, I think Karin wins slightly. Stand medium kick in this matchup is literally the god button, right? You actually, there's not much Balrog can do. It's really hard for him to get around the stand medium kick. You can literally just spam that, then stand heavy kick occasionally, stand medium kick, walk up, stand light kick, and it just gets really hard for Balrog because of that one button. Creates so many different mind games in the matchup, in my opinion. Sagat, I think is 5-5. He only has fireballs and DPs pretty much. Only low Tiger Shot is easy to react to with EX Klinko, but high Tiger Shot is really hard to punish, and I think that is why the matchup is 5-5, or Karin would win if that wasn't the case. Kage, I think Karin beats. Before I used to think this matchup was like 7-3, but now that Kage has definitely got a lot better, you know, he's definitely a lot more scary, and then with Karin nerfs, it kind of helps him a lot. The reason that it's bad is that Kage neutral is so bad versus Karin. Laura, I think Karin used to beat Laura really bad, but now I think it's like 5-5 or slightly in Karin's favor. Laura's low forward and her stand like, but the low forward mainly is so hard. Like, you can't whiff punish it, and now that you can hit confirm it, before I think Karin edged it out before and won the matchup was because you only could buffer low forward into elbow, and if it didn't hit, I am +2. Outside of low forward, lower buttons are kind of easy to whiff punish, so if she whiffing like heavy kicks, stand medium kicks, crouch medium punches, you can whiff punish her. Ed is a character I think Karin beats slightly. His V-Trigger 1, the ball, I think the ball is really good versus Karin because like when he activates it, she can't really do much. I think the stand fierce is actually so good versus Karin. It's so annoying, and it crush counters, and it beats a lot of her buttons because he goes back and then he comes. Fast V-skill ones with Ed is so annoying for Karin because it can catch her off guard walking forward or trying to react to the V-skill. Abigail, I think, is a 6-4 matchup in his favor. I think V-Trigger 2 helps Karin out a lot, especially against his V-Trigger 2. is a lot easier to deal with because you can parry the V trigger and you actually get a full combo, because for some reason when you parry his V trigger, he's still invincible when you parry him, but the invincibility runs out at the same time as my parry recovers from the move, and I get a full punish. Fang is another character I think beats Karin. The only thing that's the reason the matchup isn't bad because Fang doesn't have a reversal. So when you do get in, you're in. But in general, like, his buttons are really good. The down forward fierce, the stand medium punch, his frame traps. It's hard to V reversal Fang. Cower crouch with Karin. Rashid, I think it's a matchup that Karin slightly wins, mainly because the neutral is bad for Rashid, and at some point in the match I feel like he has to go crazy unless he gets a good start, because most times Karin get a good start versus Rashid. Nakali, I think that Karin slightly wins. Like, fighting Nakali and V-Trigger is like hard. Like, if he was always V-Trigger, he probably would win. But the fact that I can win matches or rounds without him activating, because Karin offense is really scary. But when he's not in V-Trigger, his neutral is so bad versus Karin. He has to resort to jumping and dashing. Coney is a matchup I actually think is even. I think you should play V-Trigger 1 in this matchup. But obviously Coney players are not going to do that because they're not trying to play with that forbidden nooch. They're not trying to play nooch. His stand light kick and crouch jab buffers are so good versus Karin. The stand light kick buffer is so good. It beats so much of her buttons, and she doesn't have a lot of health, so she can't take stand light kick buffer after stand light kick buffer. Folk, I think beats Karin. I think it's really hard to get around all of Folk buttons, and she has the shot. You can't jump on her ever. It's just hard to get in pretty much. Like, it's really hard getting in on Folk. Colleen, I think Colleen slightly edges out only because of V-Trigger. When she activates V-Trigger, Karin kinda had to stop playing neutral and wait for her to make a mistake, which doesn't happen if the Colleen player is really or pretty good. So I think she just slightly edges it out because the V-Trigger too. I do honestly think Bison beats Karin 6-4. It's so hard to get in on Bison. You have to like walk in, walk out, and try to make him whiff. But like, the down forward fierce is so good, and the stand fierce. You can't whiff punish Bison's stand fierce at all with Karin. It's kind of like he's zoning you out with buttons, and you kind of have to get lucky to get in. Nash, I do think this is like a slightly in Karin's favor. Only reason being because it can get hard to get around Nash's fireballs, even if you have an EX meter. Heavy fireball is pretty good versus Karin, but in general, Nash just sucks, so it just pretty much is what it is. He sucks, and that's pretty much why he loses the matchup, because he's trash. Cammy, I feel like Karin edges it out on Cammy only because she does more damage. Since Cammy does have an air approach, it makes the matchup a bit harder. But since like when I hit Cammy, it does so much, and when she hit me, it doesn't do as much. I think that gives Karin the slight edge. But everything else about this matchup is 5-5. Urian, I think Karin beats slightly. All you have to do is wait Urian out pretty much. You just wait out, you whiff punish everything he does. It's just hard when he gets Aegis Reflector. You have to really be conscious, you know. Why is Nadeshko here? That's pretty much what I think of all of Karin's matchups. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on. And we're going to keep this grind going. See you guys later. I'm out. In general, Nash just sucks, so it just pretty much is what it is.